Well, hello, David. I am so excited to talk with you about Surrogate. I do like this film. I like horror films, but what I love more, because this isn't like a trashy slasher film. No, this one, you've got mystery in here. It's very much a psychological thriller from a mystery standpoint, as poor Natalie is trying to figure out what's going on. And you throw in a MacGuffin with that nasty, nasty child services woman, Lauren. Because she really is a MacGuffin here. Because I kept watching, and it's like, and you cast perfectly with Jane Badler in the role.
Yeah, she's great.
Oh my God.
She's great in it.
I've been watching her since she started back in the early 1980s with the TV series The Doctors, and then the miniseries V. So I always love when I see her, and she just has this presence about her that she can pull off a role like this. And the way you have shot this, working with your DP, with Ben, and then cut and then edited, you really give us the ambiguity of, is she behind something? As these things are manifesting. Is she behind it? Because she seems so intent, for whatever reason, to go after Natalie. Everything about her is accusatory from the minute she's on screen.
Yeah, it's interesting with I said when I was directing her, from her point of view, it's, when you work in child services, you see a lot of horrible stuff, and a lot of parents lie about that. Yeah. So, from her point of view, she's just concerned about the welfare of a child. But we knew, when we're constructing her character, that it would, the audience would perceive her as this secondary antagonist in the story. And that was really important, because I think a lot of the best horror films have a grounded antagonist as well. So the example of, in Alien, you've got the monster running around, but then you've also got, synthetics or androids as well. So she plays that function really well. And, she's such a lovely woman in real life. It's fun to cast her in such a different role.
Yeah, I mean, she's perfect, but truly, Lauren plays as a MacGuffin here. Almost. I mean, I kept waiting for some big reveal about her to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's what the fun part about it, when you put a film out, when people have different interpretations or they're expecting different things of certain characters, which is really, that's the fun, interesting part of putting a film out there.
Well, and a lot of it comes from here. With the character of Lauren, it comes from the way, your visual grammar. I love your visual grammar in Surrogate, David. What you and Ben have done, and then what you and John have done with the editing. The visual grammar really shapes and builds the tension and creates that ambiguity and sets the mind reeling, especially from the mystery aspect, with Natalie's POV, trying to uncover what is going on. But you also don't sacrifice heart, because the big message that you give us are a mother's love and the sacrifices that a mother will do for her child.
Yeah, we certainly put, Natalie really goes through the ringers in the story. We put her through a lot. And the mystery component as well. I mean, most ghost horror films have a mystery sort of lay detective element going through them. And as we're developing that, it is fun because I love when I watch films and, growing up when you're watching mystery stories and you're trying to piece together what's happening. And the tough part about that is how, audiences are smart. So it's all about how you kind of try and keep a little bit ahead of them, but not in a false way, like not putting too many red herrings in there.
Yeah, and you definitely don't put too many red herrings in here. But what you and Ben do in particular, I love what the two of you do with the camera to develop your visual tonal bandwidth and your camera movement. You avoid, for the most part, you avoid extreme close-ups. You always pull a little further out, and you're very Hitchcockian in your approach to leaving things to our imagination so that we can wonder. You're not giving us reveals. There might be a shadow, a door may open, there may be a sound, there may be bruises somewhere, but you never see what's causing them. You might see a hand under a door, but it's just these little things so that we can build up in our minds the worst possible thing.
I mean, Hitchcock was the master of that, and we all kind of live in his shadow when we're making these genre films, like, particularly in horror and thriller. But yeah, we're conscious of, I'm glad you've picked up on that. Ben and I spent a lot of time talking about the camera perspective. It's not just the shot construction, what you talked about with shot sizes and reveals, but also just the perspective,
yes,
like where we want to put different points of views in certain scenes. And Ben did an amazing job shooting the film. In terms of, we're also looking at, there's not a lot of it is, say, locked off camera. Like when we use camera movement, it's not a lot throughout the film. It's just used in those key areas, and the impact feels a lot stronger for that reason. For example, there's only a handful of dolly shots in the whole film, but where they appear, it's like the perfect spot for them, as opposed to, we have a dolly on set every day, so let's get the camera moving every day. And I do like that sort of locked off camera discipline, which was really influenced by a lot of Korean and Japanese cinema. They shoot a lot of their films like that, and I really like it.
Where I can really see that and where it's so effective is in your third act, when Natalie goes to the the abandoned house.
Yes.
And you really give us some beautiful angles in there that really create unique perspectives as to the overview of the room, almost like we're a fly on the wall, or walking down the corridor, or what comes out of through the wall. Very nicely positioned to and in line with that is the lighting. Your production design in that particular house, by the way, is fabulous.
Yes, and it's one of those things that everything gets attributed to cinematography, and Ben's done a great job, but Bianca's production design, I think, on the film is incredible. What both of them do, and what I love so much about their work on it, is they're telling the story. So none of it is showy in terms of, we can do this to show off my work. It's like all of their design elements from lighting and production and set dressing and color schemes is all telling the story, and that's what I think is, to me, is the kind of highest praise we can give them.
Yeah, I love the production design, especially in that house. But also when you contrast that with more or less the sparsity of Natalie and Rose's house, and contrast it then with the Bayers' house, which is full and colorful and dark woods, and those contrasts really fit more or less the three girls that we're seeing throughout the film. We've got Rose, we've got Ava to a large degree, and also to our poor surrogate. But I love those differentials that you have so that we feel like we're in different worlds within each one of these locations, and that there's something key in each one of them.
Yeah, it's I'm glad you really like the stuff at the abandoned house that Natalie goes to, because those scenes were really tough to shoot. We were really under the pump time-wise. And, yeah, they came out really well. And when we got to them, because we'd been filming the house scenes for nearly 2 weeks of the shoot,
Wow.
when we got into those other locations, it really did open up, and we could just feel that contrast when we were there. And we had, the producers, like a bunch of us had all found those locations, and Vicky Blinks, the producer and first assistant director, she found that house that we shot in, and it was such a gem of a discovery, because it looks incredible.
Oh my God, it's fabulous. But but with Natalie's house, what I also love there, and also with the Bayer house, with Natalie's house, the sparsity of everything, and the white or the cream, the more washed out, it's very open. It's very metaphoric for Natalie. She's not hiding anything. When the doctor's yelling at her, when Lauren is yelling at her, no, I know you're lying. Her house speaks that she's an open book. She's an open person. There's nothing being hidden. When you look in the Bayer house, there's tons of stuff everywhere. It's filled, it's fully decorated, be it the kitchen with everything on the kitchen counter. And by the way, that's a gorgeous shot shooting from the hallway into the kitchen.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
And the reverse with shooting from Bayer's viewpoint down the hallway, seeing Natalie. I love that. But you look at the woods, you look at the color, the lighting is brought up. It's richer. And it's almost like there's so much stuff. What's lying beneath that? And then you get the abandoned house. And I don't know if it was intentional, but the metaphor really comes through with those designs. And I just love that.
Great. Yeah, it's, with Bianca, the production design, we did spend a lot of time talking about how to approach that design element, and she brought all those great things to it. I mean, one of the keys that I said to her and Ben at the start is, with Natalie's house, where the film kicks off, I said, it's not a haunted house. It's an everyday suburban house, and the hauntings happen later. So it was all about grounding it in that reality. And I think Bianca's strength, amongst other things, was able to just pick out key. She called it sort of an urban minimalist look. So it's just key props and settings in the film, but everything that's there just seems right and works. It's not kind of overdone or underdone. Walls
are uncluttered. I'm watching that, and it's like, yes, everything says Natalie's telling the truth.
It's a really interesting interpretation. I like that.
She's not hiding anything. A big, big, big thing is you had to have some girl, in addition to having Kesty as Natalie, who is phenomenal. I have loved her since Wolf Creek. She was a real find for Greg McLean with Wolf Creek, and I love her here. And then Jane Badler. You've got your three girls. And I have to say, wow. You've got Taisha as Rose. You've got Ellie Stewart as Ava. She is amazing.
Yeah.
She is amazing.
Yeah, her and the other Ellie, it was interesting. I'd never directed children before, and when I went into casting, I was like, oh my God. But I loved working with them, and they all had a very different approach to how they, like adult actors, they had the different creative approach, and I had to find different ways to direct them. And Ellie Stewart came along. It was actually Harris Fazlick who was one of the producers. We'd seen almost every child actor in Melbourne, and it's such a demanding role, even though it's only for about 5 or 6 scenes. But there's one particular set piece, it's a very long scene, and we'd seen a couple of younger actresses who were, good, but then Ellie, Harris said, check this actress out. She'd been in another short film he'd produced. So we got Ellie in, and it was a mind-blowing audition But then she managed to pull it off on set, because that's the tough bit with casting. Just, sometimes you get with actors, they're good in the audition, but they're not good on the day. But she managed to nail both of those.
The chair scene is just wow. The emotion that she gives us in her face and in her body movement as her shoulders tense up and she's holding on to the chair seat, you can't take your eyes off of her. She is really a find. She's going places, David.
Yeah, I think she's a little star in that scene. It's the seance was, everyone who'd read the screenplay, that's what jumped out at them, that set piece in the film, and where I think it works so well is all of those, we knew on the page it was working well, but all the elements just fed in and worked at production design, performance, and I think the sound design in that scene in particular really lifts it. And I knew that whoever was going to play Ava was going to have to carry that scene from the emotional peaks and troughs, which she was great in. But I think everyone along the way, it's really well graded. It's just one of those scenes where I think everyone nailed it. And Sasha, who did our sound, he came in, in the last stage, and he just took it up that other level. Because as you said, there's a lot of stuff that's about implying or building and letting the audience create those things in their mind. And I think his sound design really helps with that.
And here's where a scene where John's editing is just, you're biting your nails. It's a white knuckler. As slowly Ava's head turns to the left and slowly Ava's head turns to the right. And we start seeing mirrors. And it's like, okay, what are we going to see? And you guys pace that so perfectly.
Yeah, it's probably it's the scene that, probably two scenes we spent the most time editing was that and the first hospital scene when Natalie wakes up and is essentially being interrogated by Jane. And we spent a lot of time on the editing the sounds. And we also had a lot of footage because it was one of the scenes that we had more time to shoot, and it was really how we play around with stretching time out, because so much of it is about how you tighten things up. The runtime's very tight. It's 90 minutes.
Yeah.
I wanted a tight story, and didn't want any fat in the film. But that was one of those scenes where it was like we can expand and play around with this tension. And I think the forced perspective works really well with the camera forcing you to look in certain places that you might not want to. And when we were watching it in cinemas, it was great. You could sort of see the audience, their heads are almost swinging with the camera, but they're also starting to cower in their seats because you don't know where or what's going to come. And really, really happy with how that came together. And also Matthew Crosby, who plays Ava's father in the film Malcolm,
he's wonderful.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because you can tell he's there. Don't look, do not turn your head around. And you can see he's slowly like trying to expand his peripheral vision to see what's happening to his daughter. And really, just on every level, it's so well done, David. But, I'm really curious because this is your first feature. You're not a newbie with filmmaking, but it is your first feature. I'm curious what led you and your writing partner, Beth King, to this story to use as your first feature directorial.
Yeah, it's a funny one. I've always, been making short films and everything else for a long time.
Yeah.
But it's very hard to get a crack at a feature film, and unless you do a very low budget. I mean, almost anyone can raise $5,000 and make a really like guerrilla short film or feature film. But to find that balance of getting a good project and a bit of money behind it is really tough. So what the film came about from, Beth and I had a bunch of other films separately we'd written in various stages of development over the years. Like most writers, unfortunately most of what you write won't get made. Mm-hmm. And so I said to her, let's write an indie horror that we can make happen. Like we'll write it in a way that we can not get caught up in that development process for 6-7 years, and then it doesn't come to fruition. So we were just brainstorming a bunch of ideas for horror films, and we came up with about 6 or 7 in that process. And some of them discounted themselves quickly because we went, there's not enough meat in that idea to get a feature film out of it. And some others we're going back and writing because they had the potential, but it was just this idea of Surrogate. It just excited us the most on where we could see the potential on where the story would go, and balancing out this good piece of drama as well as a horror, which was important to us.
Mm-hmm.
Which, we're huge horror fans, and we love really dank horror films. Like, I love cheap Italian horror and slasher and exploitation. But on the other side, also, films like Ring and The Orphanage,
Mm-hmm.
Exorcist, these horrors or Psycho that are really, really good pieces of storytelling and filmmaking in their own right. So that idea, we've sort of thought with the Surrogate's premise that we could, make something that was a really good piece of drama as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I see this more leaning into the drama mystery and first, with horror brought in on top of that.
Yeah, definitely. And a little bit like, not that it directly influenced it, but Rosemary's Baby, I was watching that again recently.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the same kind of thing. And even, Exorcist works like that. There's a big chunk of, domestic drama playing out.
Yes.
Before we get into the actual horror component. And I think when it's grounded like that, that can be even more terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ultimately.
What would you say, was there any kind of real learning curve for you going from shorts into a feature?
Probably. I mean, on every project you learn different things. And probably the difference with this is the pressure is higher on what you have to deliver because there's more money at play, and the stakes are just bigger when you're doing a feature. But in terms of making it, it's really just, you need more stamina and energy. It's just a more expanded process. So I've done short films where you shoot for a day. I mean, you can shoot a short film in a day.
Sure.
And normally you're on set, even a longer short film might only be 4 days. Whereas this, it's like, it's day after day. You have to keep backing up, and, it's not a huge epic ensemble, but there's lots of different characters and locations and aspects in play that you wouldn't get in a short film. So it was really about maintaining that focus and energy and standard across the whole shoot, as opposed to just firing for a couple of days. That was probably the biggest difference.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you see yourself staying within this type of genre meld, drama with a touch of horror, or do you see yourself expanding into other films, like a straight-on horror film or a rom-com,
Yeah, I don't know how I'd go with the rom-com.
Well, that can be a horror film too. So
that is true. Yeah, I like horror's a genre I've loved from a very young age, but I love cinema. So it's not that horror is just the thing that I want to do. I'm open to certainly doing more horror, but I really like thriller, crime thriller, and war film. I've been watching a lot of war films lately, and I'd love to do a war film. So it would be nice to be working across different genres, but you can only kind of control that so much in your career. Directors get typecast a little bit like actors, so it's what comes along or what people are willing to back you on your next project. But yeah, and I think some of the other ones Beth and I are looking at lean a little bit more heavier into some of those horror aspects, not as playing as much of that drama component. But yeah, it's just really looking for that story that grabs you. That's the really thing that I'm looking for mostly to direct.
Well, you will have no trouble with the horror genre if you delve in with more horror than we have here, because you know how to dish it out. The doses of it to give effectively.
Thank you. It's very kind of you to say, but yeah, it's a genre I love, and I said I watch all range of horror for all of my life, and what's great about it is the audience is so obsessed and passionate and dedicated.
Oh my God, they are.
Which is really fun. That's a great thing. I mean, working in a genre where people are that into it and enthusiastic, and also that brutal with it as well. They know their stuff. Some of them,
Especially when you get into franchises. It's brutal.
Yeah, for sure. When you get into that whole realm, and that goes with it. I said they're really passionate and excited and enthusiastic, and the interesting bit with horror and the tough bit is that not everything's going to scare everybody. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
And I look at any film, any horror film, and some people go, "That's the scariest thing they've seen," and someone else is like, "I was bored." So you always know you're going to have that mix across a horror audience, but watching it in the cinema, I said, when you see the horror elements working, like it's a very visceral genre, when it's working, like comedy. If you've made a comedy and you're sitting in the cinema, you're sitting there and going, "Oh, the audience is going to laugh at this joke. Oh, good, they laughed, it worked." And you do get a good read. With horror, you can see. We actually had someone at the world premiere pass out in the cinema.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so when we did the world premiere, we're running in 2 cinemas because we sold the first one out so quickly. And I was in the A cinema, and it happened in the B cinema. And initially, I thought it was just someone kind of, making it up.
Sure.
But Beth, I said, who we wrote the film with, and some of the other crew and some friends were in there. And a couple of days later, they're all confirming it that a woman got up in a particular scene to leave and collapsed. So, and I said to Renee, our makeup artist, who did the special effects makeup artist, I said, "You won't get a better compliment for your work than that."
Oh my God. That's absolutely amazing. And now I'm glad you mentioned her with her special effects makeup, because you did this practically. This makeup is practical makeup. You're not doing CGI. You're not... And I love that. And it makes all the difference in the world. It really does.
Yeah, we're going into it. I said I don't want to do any VFX, really for 2 reasons. Firstly, I'm old school as a film fan as it is, and I'm just not a huge VFX fan in general, unless it's balanced out. Like going back to the classic Terminator 2 is such a great example of how you balance those elements out. But secondly, horror fans generally are not big into their VFX. They like the practical stuff because it's a lot more grounded and visceral and realistic, and fun as well. Getting the blood out on set is always fun, and the kids in particular loved all that stuff.
Yeah, so how much blood did you go through on that lovely floor in the first 15 minutes of the film? Speaking of blood.
Yeah, that's it's quite an effect, that one. We I think Renee Lish at one point is like, "I'm going to use this much," and I said to her, "Let's double it and see what happens." And it's a pretty that scene we actually shot. It was about 3:30 in the morning, so we'd already been shooting for about 12 hours. It was an epic day. It was the 3rd day of production, but there's a fair bit of blood. But there's a white nightie. I mean, you can see it in the trailer, so it's not a big spoiler. But she's got some blood on her, white nightie, in bed, white sheets, and I said to Renee, with this effect, I said, "We'll get it in take 1 or take 80." The way we're going to go about it, and Renee said, then the costume department said, "We've only got 3 white nighties, so we don't have any shots at it," and it actually was the first take.
Wow, and what really helps, what makes it look like even more blood on the floor, is the way Ben has the camera, because you're shooting at eye level with the floor. So you get that great perspective, that great focal length, and the depth of field, and the way the light is coming down, it glistens, and it just makes it look like the blood goes on for 5-6 feet.
Yeah, that was something we actually shot on 2 cameras, because when you're doing those sorts of practical effects, when you get it, you want to have a couple of angles, and the B cam down on the ground it really captures it. And again, all of those elements, and then Cassie just topped it off with the way she slips in it. Let's just say.
Yes. Yes. No, that one shot where she's on the floor and you just see it's the floor eye level camera. That is like, and I hate to say it, but it's one of the money shots of the film.
Mm. And like I said, when I watched it on camera and I was just, like, on the monitor, and we're just like, everyone's like trying to keep quiet because they want to go, oh my God, because we're still rolling. But you actually can hear off camera on the behind the scenes footage, someone's like, and almost dry reached. So it was a lot of fun, but I said it was a crazy night. We shot, I think we shot till the sun came up that night. We did about a 15-hour day, and we'd actually shot 2 major scenes before that. We shot a whole scene after it.
Wow!
But everyone was in such a pumped up mood after that because it really worked. I think, you know, when you watch your films back, you always have moments when you go, if you had a bit more time or you wish you did something differently. I mean, you're never going to be 100% happy with it, but that scene, I feel like we all really, when I watch it, I kind of go, I wouldn't alter any of the camera angles, I wouldn't alter any lighting design, and you know, and Kestie's performance, she's very, you know, she's a great physical actress as well, which is what you want in any genre, but particularly in horror.
Yeah.
So it's not just emotive, her physical stuff, and in that, it's she really, you feel what she's going through. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So now we've got Surrogate Out Digitally now.
Yes, it's out on Amazon Prime currently in the US. As of now, people can get it. It will be on Google Play and Tubi TV next Friday, which is the 16th of September. And then it's going to continue to expand out over various platforms.
Now, any chance of any DVDs coming out with behind the scenes and extras?
Yes. So we're just looking at the moment whether we're going to go the DVD or Blu-ray option. Hopefully there will be one. The plan is to try and have one ready by Christmas. But we've had a lot, you know, there's just a lot going on with distribution at the moment.
Sure.
But there is a documentary that's being cut that's looking at the making of and behind the scenes, which we would look to add in. And the angle on that is really because I work as a film and writing teacher as well, just vocationally. So sort of designing it, and it's like a mini film school, the documentary. So you'll get a little behind the scenes, but we'll look at because we had a really good rehearsal process for the film. And we look at a bunch of technical things you've been talking about, but also just how the film is designed and graded, and decisions that were made through all of that process. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to put that in as special features on a DVD shortly.
See, and that would make such a good Christmas present for people.
It would. The cinema that was running it in Melbourne, we had 2 main cinemas running the film. And I just said, maybe we should do a Mother's Day special for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you can't get a DVD ready for Christmas, you know, aim for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Australia Mother's Day, US Mother's Day. Oh, yes.
Yeah, family down and watch that one.
This would be a perfect gift for anyone's mother.
Yeah, and I don't know if in America they do this, but in Australia you have, you know, certain screenings you can bring your dog along as well. Do you do that in America?
I think there are some theaters that I have read do that. I don't know of any in Los Angeles that do, but I have seen that there are theaters where people can bring their dog, and not just a therapy dog.
I know, and that's why it was like, because there's a dog character in the film as well. Again, our mischievous side was like, oh yeah, let's bring your dog along, and all these dog owners would watch certain scenes, and because there's always that concern in a horror film when there's animals. People are like, oh my God, is something going to happen to them or not? And that would have been a very entertaining screening, I think.
Oh, I think that would have been a great screening. And I have to say, when it comes to Indy the dog, I love the scenes with Ava and Indy.
Yes, yeah. That's it's a very good penny drop moment, we'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, she is just, it's another example of how wonderful Ellie is. with the character of Ava.
Yeah, it was. That scene was really fun to shoot that one. All of the stuff with her character and Malcolm and Natalie, those scenes were all really, fun to shoot, and they're all just really working well. I think, Ryan, our costume designer, did an amazing job because we wanted to do something a bit different. And when I first met with him, I said the idea, if you've got a girl who's going to be, who can appear to be able to speak with spirits, it just said that the obvious thing would be make her a little gothic girl. And I'm like, let's not do that. Let's make her colourful. And he actually made a lot of her costumes. He's a really talented costume designer, and he designed and made a lot of them and saw some other stuff. I mean, in the park scene, I love the little rain jacket, the see-through rain jacket
that was
she's wearing.
Adorable. And the fact she has ribbons in her hair. In both scenes, she's got ribbons in her hair. And very girly looking and very sweet. And the blonde hair, she looks very angelic.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just when all those elements come together, and the Ryan and Caroline, our costume department, I think across the whole film did a great job, because we spent a lot of time designing and thinking about costumes, because it really informs the actors about their character, but also the progression of where they're at in the story.
Yes.
Particularly, with Natalie's costume, it goes through a progression. But that stuff I particularly liked when he said, "Oh, I found this see-through rain jacket." I'm like, that is incredible. I love it. It just seemed so perfect for her character.
It did. I mean, just every level on this film, David, you put so much thought into this, into telling this story. And you crossed the I, you dotted the I's, you crossed the T's. But everything you put into this, all of your hard work, it shows on screen. It really does.
Oh, great. I'm glad that, you liked it. It's there's lots of details in there that different people have picked up and contacted us about. What's really interesting is, I mean, we sort of suspected this when we finished the film, but some people came and saw it multiple times at the cinema. And because it's like, once you know some of those things that play out, you can see how it's being set up. You want to look and
see, yeah.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of other little details in, like, someone actually just sent me an email half an hour ago from America about some stuff that's just on some production design on the fridge, for example. Which I don't want to kind of do spoilers, but they're like, they picked up and they noticed a few little things like that. And there's a couple of references no one's picked up yet, so we're interested to see what happens down the track.
Well, now I have to watch it again.
Absolutely. There'll be more. There's some other bits and pieces in there, and like I said, with any film, you're not going to get to do all of your ideas, and you're always going to miss a few moments. It's always time and money. But we got a lot through that we wanted, and that little detail stuff. It's really gratifying when people do pick up on those things, but it's not getting in the way and distracting the story, if that makes sense.
The devil is in the detail. That is really what makes or breaks every film, or the details, the little details, and whether people consciously take note of them or it's just something subconscious. But it makes a difference in the viewing experience and how a film is received. So it's well worth it as a filmmaker to pay attention to those little details.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the important thing is that the audience isn't necessarily aware of those things. They're picking up on it subconsciously, or it's connecting emotionally with them. And I mean, this also comes back to, Beth and I spent 2 years writing the screenplay, and then it was 2 years to finance and get the project together. So we did a bunch of other drafts. By the time we got on set, it was probably, I think, the 9th draft we were shooting. And it all comes back to that story and screenplay. It would be horrible to direct a feature film with a terrible screenplay. Like, you would just, you're losing a lot of sleep as it is, but, you can't give good performances, and you can't direct well, and you can't have any of those things working if you don't have that screenplay to base it off, and a lot of those creative decisions come from that. And that's something in this making of doco, they're looking at investigating a bit more, because it would spoil a bunch if we got into it. But it really does, that story informs those decisions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am going to watch it again. I can't wait to see what you bring us next. I want a DVD or Blu-ray. I want all those extras on it. And this has been a
Yeah.
joy talking to you about this.
No, it's been great. As I said, it's really. I was just saying to one of the producers yesterday, the film's been really well received and it's mostly reviewing really well. And I was saying, God, this must be horrible if everyone's hating your film. So it's been lovely talking with people about it, that they're enjoying it and getting stuff out of it. And and I think there's the behind the scenes stuff. There's some really interesting things, and even just the audition. People really like watching the auditions and self tapes.
Mm-hmm. That's always a fun part of anything.
Absolutely, and I said there's some really fun ones with Ellie Stewart, who for the most of the marketing and the promotion for obvious story reasons has sort of been hidden from that. But there's some great interviews and behind the scenes with her, because she's not only a great little actress, but she's a lot of fun and really dedicated herself to. Because when we're talking about all this practical effects makeup, she's in a makeup chair for 3 hours.
Sure.
Per day. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to, once the film's known wider and then they're seeing spoilers, getting a chance to learn a bit more about her.
Yes. Oh, David, this has been so wonderful. I hope we get to chat again in the future.
Me too. Thank you very much for this. It's been great.
And please let me know when you've got something new in the works. I want to stay in the loop with what you're doing.
Absolutely, will do. So yeah, hopefully something else is coming up soon. And I've been heavily caught up on the post-production and promotion for about a year now, but I'm really looking forward to now that audiences are going to get to see the film wider across the world, and then getting into the next project. So I'll definitely keep you in the loop on that.
Oh, please do. David, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day down under.
I will, Debbie. Love it to chat.
Lovely, and we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Catch you later.